Metal Map, sponsored by Metal Street Radio. Crank it up!
Metal Matt, Alice Cooper here. Good name, by the way. I'll tell Rob that I talked to you. You're a singer-songwriter. And the best thing I can say to a guy like Metal Matt is, whatever you do, don't rust.
Hey guys, Metal Matt here, and I got a very special guest on the channel today from the new Alice Cooper album, The Revenge of Alice Cooper. It's the new guitarist Jassie, and I'm really excited to be able to chat with you because this kind of come out of nowhere. I think they've been keeping it under their hat for a long time, and all the Alice Cooper fans are going crazy now because there's a new album with the original Alice Cooper band, including you. You've been invited to join them, and I've got the honor of welcoming Dennis Dunaway from the original Alice Cooper band onto the channel today. Played on such albums, Muscle of Love, Billion Dollar Babies, School's Out, of course, you know, the iconic School's Out album, and now there's a new album, The Revenge of Alice Cooper. After all these years, you're back together, and you're dropping an album which is, you know, news which all the Alice Cooper fans are going crazy for at the moment because it was kept under your hat for so long. It was such a surprise for everyone, you know, that you're actually back together doing an album. And I just want to know, how did that happen? Because that's a really unique opportunity, and you know, it's great to see that it's happening. So yeah, how did that actually happen in the first place?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I was as surprised as anybody. But I think, yeah, Bob Ezrin was looking for someone to fit in with the band with the absence of Glenn Buxton. And I don't think they wanted to go the, you know, studio session musician route like they have, you know, on a lot of previous records. Yeah. I mean, the list of guitar players on Alice's records are just, it's insane. Like Wayne Kramer, Joe Bonamassa. I mean, it's all Steve Hunter, all those. I mean, they're just all the top top players. It's wild. And I think they wanted someone. I think it was just surprising to me that they were, you know, looking so outside of those circles. And there's a guy in Nashville named Mike Grimes, and he runs an amazing record store called Grimey's. And he also runs the Basement East in Nashville, which is one of the best venues here. And he's just really plugged into the scene. He's kind of a huge part of the Nashville community, and has helped many bands' careers. You know, I mean, Cage the Elephant, and he's been, you know, he's just really a great guy and a great part of the Nashville community. And he also knows everybody. Like he sees, you know, every new band that plays. Grimey's usually there. You know, he goes to lots of shows. And Bob, I guess, knew that about him and asked him, you know, if he recommended anyone. And Grimey thought of me, I think, immediately. But I he was like, thought of me and probably some other people. And then he said, well, let me ask like two completely unrelated sources. So he asked one of his close friends from back home. And the first person that they suggested was me. And then I think he went and asked somebody totally separate, I think at Third Man Records. And then I was also the first name. So it was sort of the first name that came up from multiple sources. So he sent Bob and Alice some of my music, and they listened to it. And then Bob Ezrin called me. He was like, yeah, put me in touch. So I was on tour in New Orleans, and got a phone call out of the blue, and it was Bob Ezrin.
That's crazy. That's a phone call you want to get.
Yeah.
How did you all get back together to do this? And
well, it was a step-by-step process. I mean, we would get together with Alice for his fundraisers for the Solid Rock Teen Centers out in Phoenix, Arizona, where Alice and his wife Cheryl are big participants. So we would get together for those, and then we would submit songs for Alice's solo albums and get together to record those. And then when I wrote my book, I think that kind of helped bring people together, even though before that, even in 2011, we were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we were on stage performing for that. with Steve Hunter on guitar and a bunch of children singing Schools Out with us. But so all of these things kind of brought everybody back together. And when I put out my book, Snakes, Guillotines, Electric Chairs, My Adventures in the Alice Cooper Group, I did a book event at a record store in Dallas, Texas. And I got Neil and Michael and Alice to show up for a big surprise concert right in the record store. And they filmed that, and they also recorded it, which they weren't planning to do that professionally. They were just doing it for their own, safekeeping. But it turned out so well that that was released live from the AstroTurf, Alice Cooper, by this guy, Chris Penn, who has since, in recent years, passed away. But he made this whole thing happen, and that brought us together. And then I get a call, like a couple of years ago, I get a call from Alice and Bob Ezrin. They're like, "Hey, Dan, we've been out in, Alice was out in Phoenix, and Neil and Michael were there, and they were getting together and kicking around ideas for the fun of it." And then they said, "Well, we were thinking, do you want to do an album?" And I said, "Well, hello, what do you think I've been saying for 51 years now?"
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like you're preaching to the choir here. So then they were saying, "Oh, okay." I was saying, "Oh, what do you have like a theme or anything so I can make sure I have songs for that?" And they said, "No, we'll do the best of the lot." And I said, "Oh, the cream of the crop." And they both started laughing because my phone had cut out. They thought I said cream of the crap. And they decided that's going to be the name of the album.
That's good. Yeah, that would have worked.
So,
Yeah, and it was very, it was very much like, let's come in and do a session together. Here's 2 songs that they sent me, and it was very, let's just see how it goes. It was very loose. No promises were made or anything. I think it was very much like, I don't know, let's see if this works. And so that's kind of how I approached it. It just, obviously I knew what a big deal it was, but also it was kind of like knowing that these guys have been playing together since they were in high school. And I was like, much, much younger, just coming into this group of like, old friends. I was kind of kept it very open to see, maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. Like, it's all about the musical connection and see if I can fit in and we can have a similar, have a dialogue together.
and so we submit a bunch of songs, and Neil and I sending them between us and sending them to Bob and all of this. And, and then there would be a long period where we wouldn't hear anything about it. So we'd think, oh, well, this isn't going to happen again. And then we get a call. Hey, Alice is going to be in Phoenix, and Neil and Michael are out here. Dennis, fly on out and let's get together in the studio. So it was just the 4 of us in the recording studio at one of the Solid Rock Teen Centers. And we were just, having fun and jamming and playing this song or that, kind of just going, flying by the seat of our pants. But it was designed, Bob Ezrin wasn't there intentionally. He agreed that it was a good idea just to get the band back together in a room and working on stuff. And it was like not really necessary. We didn't have any rust to get out. We didn't have to like get anything back. It was already still there, so but we had a blast. And that helped bring things more focused. But then another long period of nothing happening. So, oh boy. So we had submitted, I bet we had more than 70 songs submitted between Neil and Michael and I. And then Bob said, "Oh, well, let's get together in the studio with me." And he booked some studio. I said, "Wait a minute, I'm not sure about that place. You didn't like it last time." So I said, I've got an idea. And so we booked Carriage House Studios, which Neil and I had worked at before many times over the years. I even narrated the audio for my book there. But also, Bob Ezrin used to live near that studio. And at one point, he had a lot of his equipment there, and he had done some recordings there with other bands. So this fell into place nicely because by then Neil was out here near this studio, and so was I. So Michael flew out, and Alice and Bob were there, and we went into the studio. I thought to choose which 10 of the 70 songs we wanted to do, and because there's no way. I kept asking them, what songs do you want to do? I don't want to learn 70 songs.
Definitely.
So I could not get an answer. It kept changing. And so I thought we were just going to go and pick the songs and whip them into shape, and then book some studio time later to actually lay them down. But no, walked into the studio and we were recording.
Wow, so that's a bit pressure.
Yeah, but it was great. And so it was combined like the way we used to rehearse to whip songs into shape in pre-production before we went into the studio in the old days. So it was, a lot of it was just us following wherever the creative gods were directing us. We just went, we just make up a song, or we would just all of a sudden do a song that we thought was not even really in the running. So a lot of stuff like that. But we were all, we've been around the block a few times, so we know the studio, and we've watched Bob Ezrin and other, very professional producers and engineers, and Jack Douglas and Jack Richardson, and we've worked with the best. So we were like sponges and soaked that all up. So the reason we could do this album without doing 2 weeks of pre-production, there's two reasons. Number one, we had learned so much since the old days about how to take a song apart and put it back together properly. And also because of technology. Now, if we decide we want the arrangement to be different, we can cut and paste. In the old days, that was a big deal.
I'm sure.
In fact, in the old days, even if I had one bass note that I wanted to change, Jack Richardson would make me record the whole song again.
Oh no.
That was on Love It to Death and Killer and Muscle of Love. If I had one note, I had to record the whole song again, the whole track. Because he was a bass player, and he would just say, hey, you're going to be playing this song a million times in your life, so you man up and get in there,
Yeah, it makes sense.
But now, and therefore, since a lot of it was so spontaneous, a lot of it was us just trying to agree on an arrangement so that we could lay down the track, and me watching the guitar player's chord hand for the songs that I didn't know that well. And then Bob in the control room in our headphones, we could hear him say, here comes the bridge, and stuff like that. That's how new these songs were. Wow. So I could, and there's a lot of pressure there when you do that, a lot of pressure, but we stay focused at the job at hand, and each guy has his own specialty. And we all know what each other's specialty is. If I think, hey, we need a new chord here, then we look at Michael. Hey, what's the tempo? We look at Neil. All of that. We all have worked together so long. It's all well established.
The planets align for you to get this job.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy. And something I think's great is that they've kind of gave an emerging artist a chance as well, and it doesn't happen that often. I'm Alice Cooper Facebook pages and things, and you see a lot of the old grumpy guys sort of saying, "Oh, who's this young guy? Why didn't they get
Sure.
some old guitarist and stuff?" But the thing is, you're the kind of person who's going to be keeping, this music alive for a long time. And if they weren't given their lucky break in the beginning, then they wouldn't be where they are. And I think it's great that Alice and the band are kind of encouraging that, and they've made the right choice because you're young, you got the energy, you're obviously in that kind of similar area. I saw another interview with you, and you're kind of quite similar to Alice in a lot of ways. A lot of the interests are there, and your kind of background and stuff. And I think that's what they need. And
But even though we're very focused and work really hard, we're willing to do a take 50 times if that's what it takes.
yeah.
But we also have a lot of humor. We just had a blast. It was so much fun.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, it must have been great just being back together and back like the old days. I'm guessing. Did it kind of come back to you in the same way? Was it like a new experience, or was it like stepping in the studio years ago? Apart from all the advancements that you talked about.
It was more like stepping into the studio in the old days, because when we get together, we all revert to high school kids, because that's where we all started together, so that sophomoric humor is rampant. And
I can imagine. Yeah.
yeah, so it's in fact, in a way, because Glenn Buxton was there in spirit, a lot of the feel was early in our friendship.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're filling in basically for Glenn Buxton, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. And, that must be quite a hard thing to kind of wrap your head around. How did you approach that with your style and kind of trying to get, cover what he's doing as well?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I kept it pretty, I didn't go in trying to, be a Glenn Buxton clone per se, because no one can replace Glenn Buxton. If they wanted someone that did that, they could have found someone more of an expert in that field than me, because I'm a little bit more like Jimmy Page is kind of my my god. So I come from the Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck school a little bit more. But in talking to Alice, the Yardbirds were their favorite band in high school, and so I feel like there's a connection there that kind of like helped me make more sense of it, where it's like, I come from a similar school, not necessarily, but I was never like, I never got like obsessed with Alice Cooper when I was young. I would usually get obsessed with bands and then like learn everything. And I loved Alice Cooper, and I always knew all of the, the big hits and everything, but I never studied that music really.
So, I mean, we were in high school, we always put each other down all the time. It's sarcastic humor, and we expect it. If I walk out of the room, I know when I walk back in, somebody's already whittled me down, Yeah. and then when they walk out, then it's their turn.
Well,
so that also had a lot to do with Glenn Buxton's spirit, which is very prominent on the second half of this album, because more and more as the album goes on, it goes more and more in the direction of our early days as the Spiders, and the kind of music that in the days when Glenn was the only real musician in the band, and he was showing us how to play these certain types of 3-chord progression songs and all of that. So the album keeps going along, and then about 2/3 of the way through, all of a sudden it just starts getting more and more Glenn Buxton, and I'm very proud of how we managed to do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it sounds like he was definitely with you in spirit. That's great that the album kind of, you could feel the vibe, as it was coming along. He was a real legend. He's a fantastic player, and yeah, it's so good that you managed to capture that. That must have been really nice sort of experience to feel that, and for the music to go in that direction again. I'm kind of like you were, but I was the kind of Alice was my kind of thing growing up.
Really?
My obsessive band and Judas Priest, the two of them. You
Oh no.
know,
Oh
the
well,
two.
they're on tour right now or
Yeah,
soon.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. That's got to be the coolest gig because I'm out in Cancun now. It's a bit difficult to get to some of these
Right.
gigs, but I'm going to try and make what I can when things come around. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, and I think it's good you kind of in a way that you weren't like the mega fan growing up and things because it's kind of more organic. You're kind of putting your own flair on things, and I think
Yeah.
with that pressure, it would have been probably
It
quite.
it would have, yeah. I mean, and I did feel some pressure, but yeah, I think that really helped in that I was, it wasn't like,
Yeah,
I was approaching it more from a musical perspective than from a fan perspective or from it was all about let's come up with something together, let's fit in, let's make something that I think is cool and they think is cool.
no, so do you have any kind of memories of kind of getting together and writing the songs? Was it hard picking the songs together? Were you all coming with different songs this time, or was it kind of organic? You kind of just went with the ones you felt, or was it quite difficult to pin it down because you must have all come in with different material, I guess.
It was tricky to pin it down because it was overwhelming the quantity of songs we had. We could have done 5 albums, but because we are also collaborative, it's like none of us can say, okay, we're not going to do that song. That's not how we work. It's more like a majority rules, and then that's the direction we go.
Oh,
And once in a while, if there's some difference of opinion that looks like it's going to compromise us meeting the deadline of the studio time, then Bob Ezrin will maybe come in and make the final deciding vote, which that's fine with all of us. He's the producer, so
mhm.
so there's never any contention among us. We sometimes people might, if they were walking by our rehearsal room or in the studio, they might think, "Oh my God, these guys are all screaming at each other. They must hate each other," and the things we're saying about each other. But our humor is put down humor, which doesn't translate to black and white in a book. It
Uh,
looks nasty if you don't specify that it's an LOL all the time.
yeah, yeah.
But we're passionate about whatever each of us thinks is the best idea for that part of the song, and we're willing to debate it. And a lot of times, volume is one of the deciding factors.
Yeah. Um,
But we never get personal. It's never like putting down the other person. It's putting down the idea that they might think is best.
yeah, yeah, that's fair enough. I guess that's how band dynamics work with any band. You're going to have that element of
Of course,
sort of
that's
fighting.
collaboration.
Yeah,
If it was just me going in and it's my solo album and I have final say, okay, that's understood. But this is a collaboration which has to be understood. You also have to know well enough about when a song sounds good, when a part sounds good, to not try to change it just because an idea popped into your head.
mm,
And we all have that sensibility too after all of these years.
that's great. Yeah, yeah, and obviously you've got a new addition as well that's joined the band. Someone who I spoke with a couple of days ago, and
I think when Dennis and Neil they came and saw my show in Nashville, I think it was actually the first day that we recorded together. After the recording session, they came. I had a show in Nashville, and they came,
uh,
and I think they kind of understood a little bit more, where I was coming from by seeing my show and seeing the theatrics, and they said that it reminded them a lot of the stuff they were doing in the early days.
a lot of the Cooper fans are asking, "Who is this guy?" They thought you might have got in. It's someone who's been playing guitar for many years, but you've went for a younger kind of musician. You're giving a younger guy a chance who's kind of got that same kind of energy as you guys, and he kind of fits in really perfectly. Jassie, can you tell me how that come about, and how it
Yeah.
was actually working with him? And
I saw your interview with Gyasi. It was
Oh,
very good. In fact, that led to me jumping at the chance as soon as you reached out to me.
oh,
Yeah, well, let's go back a little earlier. We've got like a lot of our demos, like Joe Bouchard from Blue Oyster Cult and Blue Coop, helped me with some of my demos, and Nick Dudkovsky and Russ Wilson on drum. And Neil had all of Rick Tedesco with him, and Rick Tedesco worked with me. So we had Rick Tedesco in the studio at this session I was just telling you about when we laid down all the basic tracks. But then we needed a couple more songs. At that point, we were all racking our minds for who we should get to play Glenn's part of what we needed for the music. And everybody had their own ideas. Rick Tedesco came up, and I have a lot of friends that are excellent guitar players and great guys. So and then Michael had his ideas, and it started turning into, we had too many ideas, not even counting Alice saying, let's get Slash and all of that kind of stuff, all of that was great, except we decided, okay, we're going to have Rick Tedesco come in the studio with us, just because he knows some of the songs that Michael doesn't know, and that'll help us along. And Rick was great. He played on the bed tracks, and he played an amazing lead part on a song, Blood on the Sun. But then when we needed a couple more songs, and Bob said, hey, there's this guy in Nashville, Gyasi, everybody's telling me that's the guy you need to get. And this would settle it. Instead of you guys trying to get your own ideas in there, then I'll decide who this guy is, but only if it works. So like Jassie said on your show, he came in just kind of like to see how the fit was, and we laid down a couple of tracks, including a Yardbirds song, because Jeff Beck had just passed away at that point, and Yardbirds were our big heroes. Well, as it turns out, Gyasi is a big Yardbirds fan as well. So we laid down I Ain't Done Wrong, and it was cooking. And so that went well. And then we laid down another track. I can't remember which one now, but we laid down 2 tracks that day. And not only were we able to communicate with him just like we would have with Glenn. In other words, Gyasi's got he's a seasoned studio guy. He knows how that goes down. So there was no problem there. And on top of all of that, he's like the nicest guy in the world, so.
He is, yeah.
Okay, Neil and I are still thinking, well, I don't know, he doesn't sound like Glenn, but then we went to Gyasi's live show that night. His band is great. They all have the look, and they all have the stage moves and everything. So we went to the show, and it opened with just Gyasi sitting in a chair with a dobro guitar and an acoustic guitar and even an old cigar box guitar. Wow. And he's doing this deep Delta blues stuff. Okay. And we're like, what? Wow. Okay. I didn't know he did that, And so then after that set, Gyasi goes in the back room, and then he comes out, and it's all glammed out, and he really knows how to control the stage and put on a highly entertaining show. Yeah. And the band was great. So, and then they all came over to our table and hung out with us after the show, and it was great. So that was the clincher. Then Neil and I said, he's the guy, Bob's right. And most of what he does on the album, which is a lot, came after the fact. He was doing overdubs and stuff over what we had already done. I wasn't in the studio other than the 2 songs that Neil and I did in Nashville.
Oh, wow. Wow. So yeah. So he just had the sound, and it sounds like he was full of surprises, and I think we'll hear that on the album. Maybe even some surprises to you. I don't know if you've heard every piece of what he's done yet. I don't know with the overdubs and everything, but yeah, it sounds like it's going to be full of surprises. Yeah, no, that sounds really cool.
Oh yeah, I've heard. I'm well familiar with the album. I have the insider version.
Oh, sweet.
And thanks to you on your show, I never knew this. We did this song, "What a Sid," which is dedicated to Glenn Buxton. And "What a Sid" is what Glenn would say if you did something dumb. You know, if you walked into a room and tripped, then Glenn would go, "What a Sid."
That's
It had nothing to do with Sid Barrett, like a lot of people think, since Pink Floyd stayed at our house on their first tour.
Oh,
But Gyasi on your show was talking about his love of Django Reinhardt.
mm, mm.
And what he played on my song, which turned out to be "What a Sid," is very Django Reinhardt. And when I heard him play that, I thought, well, okay, here's another level. But I didn't realize that he had the Django Reinhardt thing going too.
That's really cool. Well, I'm glad you learned something. Yeah. He was full of surprises for me. I learned a lot. He was very interesting to hear. And yeah.
You
No,
know,
I checked out quite a few of your things, and it's really good. Yeah, you got a
thanks.
classic
Yeah.
sound and your style. You got a really good, like you say, your outfits are fantastic. You know, you got that Bowie
Yeah.
vibe. And
Right.
I heard
Yeah.
Lightning and Sweet Thing. They had a couple of your tracks, and that was really cool. What I come across
Thanks.
there, and yeah, really
Yeah.
cool stuff. And
I've spent, years kind of going into all kinds of different styles and things, but so I have a lot of influences. But I think from a songwriting perspective and a sort of a musical vision perspective, I just think Bowie is just so brilliant in the way he was able to combine these different things. And I think I think the reason I like that so much is that I'm into so many different things. So I like taking different things and combining them,
yeah.
theatrics, the fashion, the makeup, the persona, the lyrics, because I in college I studied gypsy jazz, like Django Reinhardt. So, trying to bring in some elements of the, jazz music and, cabaret and, kind of all these different things and finding a way. And I feel like glam rock and the way Bowie did it, I think, is really amazing because it's so intellectually stimulating and there's so much, it's so rich. There's so much there aside from obviously, and it fucking rocks too, it's
Thank
like,
you.
so
That's much like how Bowie did himself. He kind of was a bit of a chameleon. He'd take things from his
yeah,
influences and kind of it become his own unique thing. I think that's quite a cool approach. I'm kind of similar. I do music myself. I sing a songwriter, but I draw a bit from Judas Priest. I draw a bit from Alice Cooper, and then other little things that I like. Some psychedelic stuff like gong sometimes, and
cool.
all this
Yeah.
kind of old school kind of stuff. But when you sort of take little things, it can kind of come together as quite a unique.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys just got along great, which is really nice. And I'm really happy for him. He got the opportunity. And like I said on his interview, it's nice to see someone, given a chance who's starting out, or, well, he's probably more than starting out, but you know what I mean? He's kind of, he's a newer musician. It's nice to see him, given such a cool opportunity. And I think we're going to hear him shine on the album along with you guys. It sounds like it's going to be really exciting. You dropped Black Mamba recently as a single. And what do you remember about that? Any stories about that?
That was one of the songs that we had wasn't even included in the 70 demo submitted.
Oh, wow.
It was we went in the studio and then Neil said, kind of like in a let's warm up sort of frame of mind, Michael, what's that riff that we were jamming on out in Phoenix? The two of them would get together, and so Michael started playing the riff. Actually, this came about when we got together, just the four of us out in Phoenix.
Wow.
And then because Neil and Michael had just jammed on it the day before or something. So Michael started playing the riff, and then Alice got the idea, it popped into his head right away. This should be about the most dangerous snake in the world, the Black Mamba. And we thought, oh yeah, let's do like a New Orleans kind of voodoo-ish sort of a thing, and so the melody developed. I mean, we had a big chalkboard like we used to use in the old days. And so we'd draw on the chalkboard the arrangement and maybe some of the lyrics or whatever we needed to remember.
Wow.
And then we'd have an eraser and just erase a part and move it to another part if we wanted to change the arrangement. That's how we wrote Halo of Flies.
Wow.
But that one had a lot of parts.
That's a
So if you erased the part, you had to find a place to fit it up here. But anyway, so Alice even forgot the melody at one point. We went in the studio to listen to what it sounded like and came back out, and Alice forgot what the melody was.
Oh, no.
Luckily, I remembered it. And so as soon as I started singing it, then it came back to him.
Oh.
And he didn't. So when we got out to this more recent session, which was the whole band with Ezrin, then we ran it down again. And by then, Alice had zeroed in on a lot of the lyrics. And then after the fact, the overdubs, originally I thought, okay, these songs are so new, I'm going to probably, in my head, while we're laying down tracks, I'm thinking, I'm going to redo my bass parts, just to lock them in because everything's so fresh and new and spontaneous. And so after the fact at home, I wrote other bass parts for several of the songs, and I sent them to Bob Ezrin, and he said, Dennis, no, the spontaneity that we captured in the studio is so good, don't mess with it. And then so I went back and listened. I said, you know what, he's right. I'm getting too slick.
Yeah. It's funny. I've heard that same thing. I've done a few interviews lately, and probably the past 3 interviews, I had Doug Aldrich on the other day. He's dropping an album as well, and he said the same thing.
What we usually would do would be we'd go in and we'd record the basic tracks, and then we'd kind of go back and listen, and we'd fix parts or develop parts. Like I might get through the tracking, playing rhythm guitar and throwing down a little solo or something. But I know that I'm going to go back and redo the solo, so I don't worry about it. And maybe the rhythm part, I might go back and say, I love this part the way it feels, but this part here, I want to change it, And so we take it a step further. With this Looking for Trouble album, it's live. It's like we recorded it live. The only thing I think maybe John had to go back and do some vocals because maybe he didn't have all the lyrics or whatever. We were moving really fast. I mean, literally, this record, literally, it was recorded in under a week. probably more like 4 or 5 days total.
Wow.
And that includes John, fixing some vocals if he wanted to, or if Marty wanted him to. And that's it, man. Then Marty mixed it. So yeah, usually we always record live together, but then we would normally go back and revisit it. We didn't do that. We just kept it live.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's a great approach. And I guess although these are covers mainly, sometimes that's quite a good thing I'm a songwriter myself and a singer, and when I do songs, I kind of I like to go with the first kind of thing mainly that comes to mind when I'm putting together the song, because I feel if you spend too much time, the song changes and you kind of sometimes lose that original thing that made the song good, if you know what I mean.
That's right. You can get in your own way and get too far away from the original beauty, the thing that was original. That's a good point that people should do, is always kind of try and find a way, whether you do it with your phone or on your computer, whatever. When you get a basic idea and you throw it down without thinking, or you sing it into your phone without thinking, there's a beauty about that you try not to lose that, when you're doing the song for real.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's that subconscious kind of thing. And it kind of resonates with people more than a thought that is too well thought out, because you can kind of think, oh, people are going to love this, and then you kind of spend too much time critiquing it, and they probably won't. I think most people are drawn to something quite organic, and the first thought that comes to mind is often the thing that's gonna resonate more than when you kind of change things too much. Nothing good really comes out of overthinking, you know. Sometimes you got to just,
That's right.
yeah, go
That's
for it
that's
kind of thing.
absolutely right, man. That's our biggest enemy is overthinking. There's,
Absolutely.
it's interesting story is I used to do a lot of sessions where, the producer would say like, okay, just do the rhythm track, then put a solo down, and I would put a solo down. He'd be like, "That's great, man." I maybe do it like 3 times, and the third one he'd be like, "Oh, that's amazing." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let me listen to that, and I'll see what I like and see what we can grab from that." And he'd be like, "No, that's it, man. That's the solo. That's like it's got listen, Doug, listen to it." And I'd be like, "It's okay, it's good." And I would be, let me have another pass. And I have to, once you throw down something, it was off the cuff and it's got a beauty to it.
We're recording, and they go back and change some things, but the producer was like, no, it's a spontaneous thing is what kind of, it's that organicness that kind of comes through. Sometimes that's what you want in the final recording. Yeah, you can kind of keep going over stuff, but you'll lose that original kind of vibe, and that seems to be quite a familiar thing between lots of people who are recording. Yeah, it's something you've got to try and capture that energy when you first think of it.
Exactly. Like I know Ian Hunter, and he always says the first initial concept is usually the best. But when I say that, that was Rick Tedesco playing guitar. Alice was in the studio just singing in our headphones for a guide. A lot of times he didn't even know the lyrics. He just hummed the verse melody and then hum the chorus melody and stuff, so we would have a reference to where we were in the song, like we used to do in the old days. And so that raw energy was really bass and drums, because that's what you go for on a bed track. And Michael redid all of his parts, because this studio has all kinds of vintage amps, but they didn't have one that really suited Michael for what he wanted. So later on, he redid all of his guitar parts out in Phoenix, Arizona, and then Alice redid all of the vocals. And they would call me. Alice was very busy, so if he'd have a couple days off, Bob would get a studio and they'd go in and lay down another song or two.
Yeah.
They'd call me, "Hey, Den, what do you think the lyrics should be on this?" And so I'd give them my 2 cents. And that's really when the polish of what Alice's talent is with the lyrics. He takes my melody, and he even takes my concept for a song and does the same thing all over, only he rewrites the song, only it's his version of what I did. Say like on One Night Stand. One Night Stand was originally called Eight Alive, which basically it was about a guy that goes and hangs out with this man-eater woman. And next thing you know, his wallet's gone, and he's problem. Well, Alice takes the same idea, only it turns out that he's the one that has the upper hand in the end. So Alice loves that, put a twist in there.
Yeah.
But a lot of the Alice's overdubs came together just on days off, out on the road and stuff.
Yeah, so it's quite crammed schedule, and I've always loved Alice's approach to songwriting. He'll always manage to make things a bit twisted, and and I'm sure you're all involved with your dark humor and stuff of the whole band. I'm sure you all had some dark elements to putting forward these twisted little ideas, and I think that's what made you guys so unique. The lyrics and the sound together, just nothing had been done like that. It's such a unique kind of sound, and I love it. It's amazing stuff. What was it like getting in the studio with Alice? Obviously, Black Mamba's dropped now, which is a great song. Any stories about that, or working with the band? How was that actually being in the studio with them?
It was great. It was really it was really cool to, when we set up, we would set up kind of in a circle, so it was like I was kind of right across from Dennis, next to Neil, and then Alice would be over here. And those sessions, Michael Bruce wasn't at the Nashville sessions because he couldn't fly in, so it was just the four of us. Yeah, it was really, it was just a band in a room,
Yeah.
We did it live, and all the basic tracks and everything. It was pretty surreal, to be sitting across from Dennis and like watching him, like come up with parts and try different things. And his bass playing, I love his bass playing. It's so great. It's so iconic. It's like, it's the real thing. So yeah, that was great. And then, a lot of that, those were sort of some of the basic sessions, but I didn't play on the basics for the whole record. So there were a lot of other sessions that happened where it was just me and Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin would fly to town from Toronto, and we would get in a studio and kind of go through, these songs that already had basic tracks and work, So most of this record, my closest work was done with Bob Ezrin, kind of one-on-one, just the two of us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Bob is at least 50% Alice Cooper, or if not more. I mean, he's brilliant. He's just, the way his mind works. He's just has just a great. I mean, he's a producer. He's got the producer mind, so he's able to kind of take account for every detail and the big picture at the same time.
One big question about the new album, The Revenge of Alice Cooper. Do you have a top 3 songs on that album which spring to mind?
Yeah, my 3 songs out of 4. I have 4 songs.
Oh, you're full as well.
I have 3.5 songs. Yeah, I'm very happy with the songs that I brought to the table. Wild Ones, One Night Stand, Blood on the Sun, and See You on the Other Side. I know that's 4, but Neil and I wrote See You on the Other Side, so that's 3.5.
That's wicked. Yeah, 3.5 works. Yeah.
Not that I'm not happy with what Michael brought and Neil brought, because that's all great too. But I'm especially happy with how the band did the songs that I brought in.
Yeah, you're always gonna, have a special place in your heart for the ones you.
Yeah, but not always. Normally I wouldn't have gone that route, but on this album, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I can't wait. It drops. What date is it? July? Is it 30?
July 25th.
25th. Yeah. Forget what I said. July 25th.
Yeah, and we're going to try to make it a big deal that day.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I hope. And before you go, are you guys going to be on the road touring, or is it just a maybe thing?
I haven't heard anything definite. I've heard Alice talking about possibilities and stuff, but we're ready. All it takes is a phone call, and we're there.
Awesome.
You want me to play at Madison Square Garden tomorrow night? I'm there.
There you go. Well, there you go. Hopefully,
it has a lot to do with how big of an outcry the fans can make, because it has to do with the fans convincing the promoters to hire us.
Yeah. I'm sure they will. I know that from all the pages I'm on and stuff, the Alice Cooper pages, everyone's going crazy for this. Come on, everybody, let's get one last tour, or more than one. But yeah, let's see you out there again.
Well, I joked with Alice we should do a farewell tour like Cream, which lasted about 6 years or something.
Yeah, they all do
Or
that.
Motley Crue farewell tour. Oh,
Yes. That'll work. They all seem to do it, so there'll be no shame in that. But yeah, thanks so much.
It sells tickets. Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's been great chatting with you, and yeah, I can't wait to hear it. And yeah, everyone, go and grab it when it's out, and check out Black Mamba if you haven't yet, because it is amazing. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Thank you.
Playing that music with one of the guys, one of the the originators, the one of the biggest rock bands in the world. I mean, it was definitely a pinch me moment of just feeling like all the hard work and my life of being in this music and writing and being inspired by it and being invited into that room and getting to participate was pretty surreal.
Yeah. It's the kind of confirmation really that any musician wants. I think it's a difficult thing. I think sometimes you don't even know what you're doing as a musician. It's such a kind of organic thing that you don't always know if people are going to like it or whatever. You've got to just go with your heart and go with what you feel. And sometimes that kind of confirmation is just, you've kind of made it then, it's just nice.
Right.
Yeah. I'm happy for you. I'm glad you got that opportunity. It's I just can't wait to hear the album. I'm one of the excited fans who are going to be blasting that it comes out. Is it July did the album comes out, or
July 25th, I believe?
25th. Perfect. Well,
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. And it's been great chatting with you.
Likewise.
Good to get to know you a bit more, and I hope everyone goes and checks out your songs now, and obviously when the album drops, grab that one. It'll be out everywhere, I'm guessing.
Yeah. There's you can pre-order it now, I think, on Amazon, vinyl and all that.
Brilliant. Yeah. Awesome. And are you doing any promo things with Alice or the band to promote it or anything?
I was just talking to Dennis yesterday, actually. I'm on tour in June in Asheville, North Carolina, and he's going to be there. So we're right now we're setting up, I think, like a TV thing to kind of promote the record together. Maybe might do an in-store, a record store there. So that's kind of the only thing I have planned with them, in person at the moment. But we've got, there's other interviews in the works and things like that. So I'm sure there'll be more coming down the line.
That's really cool. Well, keep me in mind. I'm always happy to have you guys on. If you ever I'll definitely be happy to talk about this some more. It's, really exciting stuff. Thanks for your time, buddy, and I'll see you soon. And I look forward to chatting in the future. Thanks very much.
Man. Cool. Cheers. Thanks for having me. Cheers. Thanks, man.
Metal Matt, Alice Cooper here. Good name, by the way. I'll tell Rob that I talked to you. I know we got canceled at Comic-Con in London, but that'll come back up again. We'll do that. You're a singer-songwriter, and the best thing you can do during this crazy time right now is to write as much as you can. Writing is everything. All right, I will check out your YouTube, and I'm glad I'm your hero. And the best thing I can say to a guy like Metal Matt is, whatever you do, don't rust.
Metal Maps, sponsored by Metal Street Radio. Crank it up!